Okay, hey everybody. This is episode 2 of Hit Record. Back here in the control room at Alpaca Ranch Recording. Different day, not much tidier, really, at all. Nobody's coming to the studio, so, whatever. Just me in my pajamas. So today, we'll talk a little bit about editing, specifically drums, and mostly just cleaning up tom bleed. This is a modern rock type of track by a local guys called Vice Verse. We're wrapping their EP up. They've released a song called Gypsy. We finished up a little while ago, and so now I'm in the process of finishing up the other songs. It's gonna be like a five song thing. Now, we record a lot of live drums, a lot of bands, and so, you're never gonna get a perfectly isolated tom or snare drum or cymbal when you have a live drum set. It's just not possible. There's too much bleed, there's too much energy in the room, there's just too much going on. So, going through each snare drum track and trying to get rid of all the little dead space is just totally impractical. However, toms, which can cause a ton of bleed, especially because this guy had 5 toms, which is we were not expecting. He had a big old 18-inch tom that took us like almost an hour to tune because it was rough. Anyway, so we're going to clean up his toms just to get some of the bleed and the cymbal noise and the background noise out of the track because it's a modern rock thing, it needs to be really punchy, which means a lot of compression, and compression has a tendency to bring up background noise and weird overtones that you don't really want all the time. So that's what we're going to work on today. Now, when we mic toms here, we almost always do a tom top and bottom. You can see here, there's 2 hits basically at the same time. That's tom 1, et cetera, et cetera. Tom 2, tom 3, and potentially to tom 5. I don't even know if he hit tom 5 on this track, and we'll find out soon enough. So just to record this for you guys out there, we've got the miking was a 421, Sennheiser 421 on top, and a Sennheiser E609 on the bottom through a Focusrite Red preamp, the older one, I think it's the Red one, and then the bottom preamps were the MCIs that are built into our console. So just so you know. Now, what we did here to make life a little bit easier is grouped the top and bottom toms together. As you can see, T1, T2, T3, T4, T5. And we're going to use those to make editing just a little bit easier. So I'm going to take off the drum group so that I can only edit my toms. And here we go. It's really just a conceptual thing. And this is just the way that I like to work. None of this stuff is set in stone. So this is just what helps me clean up toms and makes my workflow a little bit faster. I like to work from the back of the song to the front. And the reason for that is, you work on 10 songs a day sometimes, doing little things here and there, and I can't remember where all the drum hits are, so I don't want to accidentally delete something. So I start at the end of the song and work my way forward. I know that everything, past where I'm working is already pretty much taken care of and done, as opposed to being surprised by a drum fill, halfway through the second chorus or something, and you accidentally get rid of it because these are pretty clean. Like, we can see our waveforms pretty well right there, but sometimes there's so much bleed or the drummer doesn't hit the toms that hard, so you have to kind of go through a lot more detailed way to find it. So this just makes me feel a little bit better about not missing something. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in. I'm on a Windows machine, so Control Alt right bracket, and just kind of blow up these waveforms a little bit so they're easier to see. And then I'm just going to solo up all my toms. I guess I didn't have the solo turned on that one, but that's okay. There you go. And as you can see, I've got pretty minor processing on there, SSL channel that's configured, just with some basic EQ and gating and compression to kind of bring the toms a little bit forward so they're just kind of easier to hear, basically. And then we've got a overall gate on the toms, but I'm going to get rid of that for the time being so I can hear all the lovely noise we're getting rid of. So obviously, this is the end of the song. There's a bunch of bleed into these guys, so we're just going to listen to them and see if anybody actually hit a tom, because it just sounds like a resonance to me. Cool. All right. And see, all that noise there is just from the tom tracks. So what we're doing now is we're just going to get rid of it, and that's just less crud that you're going to have to fight with in your mix. And it's not even so much that it's the worst thing in the world that there's bleed in there. Like, that's fine, really. The problem is it's almost always out of phase when the drummer hits something that you actually want to hear, like a crash cymbal or maybe a big snare hit or something. The phase cancellation makes it all wobbly and super hollow. So that's really one of the main reasons we do this. And it's not appropriate necessarily on every single kind of music, but for this stuff, it definitely is. Like if you had like a jazz thing or a ska thing and it just kind of worked with all the energy in the room, then go for it. It's less editing. But for this stuff, we definitely need to do it. So here's the other reason I like to work from the end to the front of the song. So I've got all this crud here, and I know that this is not a drum hit. That's my hit. That's what I want. So this little shortcut key that I'm embarrassed how recently I learned it is just the S button, and it goes boom. Gets rid of everything to the right of the cursor, which is super, super handy. And when I edit drums, this is the high tom here. So obviously, he's doing a little fill. Check it out. Yeah, cool. It's like the panning is kind of weird, but this isn't a mix. This is just an edit session for us. So you can hear it. Cool. All right. Awesome. So what I try to do, because I'm using room mics and I'm going to create an ambience around this stuff, so I don't need a ton of the end of the tom sustain for this fill because he's going right into the second tom. So my kind of rule of thumb is I like to have it faded out by the time the next hit comes in. And this is not, again, hard and fast by any means, but that's kind of like my starting point. So I'll do that, and then we got this guy who, again, there's just nothing going on past this because we know that because we already listened to this. And then you just go find the next hit. The next hit might be a snare drum. There's a snare drum hit right there. So I'm going to go to the next hit. Maybe not perfectly on it because, again, it's a live drummer and it's kind of a little organic, but that's kind of the general area that I like to cut. So we'll hit S, delete it to the end of the track, hit fade, cool. Here's another one. This guy's got a ton of sustain on it. You can hear it ringing down there. So I'm going to do the same thing. Hit S to the end of the song, fade it. And then I'm looking down here, and there's nothing happening with those other two toms, which is kind of cool. So since I know I'm at this point in the track, I'm just going to get rid of that to this point. And if I need to go back, I always can. Now here's the thing that makes my life easier. So I always have tab to transient on, and what that does is every time you hit tab on the keyboard, it'll take you to the next transient in the track, right? Like there's the top of the drum hit, and all I'm doing is hitting tab. There we go, cool. So then I hit B, break the region, and there's probably faster ways to do this. If you guys know, just let me know, because sometimes this is just a total drag. And I'm breaking the region in front of each one of these hits, okay? And what that allows me to do is when I'll scoot over here, try to find the next drum fill. Actually, I don't even need to because this is just empty space. And I know that just because I'm visually kind of comparing that to that, and we'll go listen back to it and make sure that there's no hits there at all. Nothing. So delete, delete, delete. And there's your tom fill, all nice and clean. Cool. That's really kind of all there is to it. I wanted to show you one more thing as far as this goes. All these can go away. There's nothing there. Nothing. Sometimes if you're having a real hard time hearing the toms, it's cool to open up the overhead mics while you're editing, because that'll give you a better, you'll be able to hear the tom hits and the bleed in the overhead mics, which is sometimes handy. But right now we just don't even need to worry about it because it's not doing anything. Yeah, you can hear all the toms, all the resonance, all that crap that we're just taking out of our mix, so we can keep it cleaner and not have to fight with it quite so much. I'm trying to find a fill that I can actually, yeah, same thing, just boom, boom, boom on the snare. That's cool. It's less stuff for us to have to worry about. I'm fine with that. Editing is where all your time goes. The old adage that it's 10% of the work takes 90% of the time is totally true when it comes to this stuff. All right, here again, boom, boom, boom. Breaking at the top of the region. There's nothing there. I'm gonna get rid of that. Fade that guy. Tab transient, break. Nothing there. And see, since there's no other hit really coming in, I mean, there's a snare hit there, but you see where the resonance of that tom, the sustain is. Sometimes you'll see some stuff in the actual waveform that kind of gives you an idea of where to cut it. And the way this is cut, we can always go back to it. We can always, drag this out or add a big reverb hit or something. We're not necessarily stuck with it, but like I said, this is just kind of the starting point. And then once we play the track back, we'll know if it works in context, because it always works great in a vacuum when there's nothing else to compare it to. But this, yeah, here we go. Yeah, and there's a little bit of cymbal bleed in there, but I really don't think it'll be that big of a deal. And if it does turn into a big deal, this is a pretty neat little trick that I totally stole from Tom Lord Algae. So we're going to go grab an EQ plugin. Let's just do the Fab Filter because it's super cool and I like it. So you hear the cymbal bleed at the very end of this. Do a little, you know, it's not crazy, but it's there. So what he does, he'll take this down to like maybe 600 hertz and then just print it on the fade. And that filters out, or considerably reduces anyway, the bleed from the cymbal into the tom mic. And then the little crossfade there, basically gone. I mean, you'll never notice that in a track like this with 9,000 guitars and stuff like that. So that's a neat little trick to get rid of there too, but you don't want to do it on the whole tom because then you're going to lose a lot of the attack. So just keep that in mind. Let me find a fill that actually is trying to show the thing that I mean to show. Lots of tom fills in here. Okay, this one will work. Cool. All right. So again, I'm ignoring what's happening before this. I just want to demo this one thing real quick. So here's a nice fill. We got bleed, 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 cymbals, noise. He's just cutting between the toms. Big nice fancy fill. He's a really good drummer, so it was cool to have some stuff like that in there, but that doesn't make our life any less stressful. So again, working to the end of the song, from the end of the song, excuse me, there's nothing going on here, so this can go away, and I'm just going to focus on these two top toms right now. And don't just randomly or brazenly delete stuff like I'm doing. I've been working on this song for a while, so I kind of know what's going on. But if it's something you never heard before, make sure you're listening to the tracks all the way through. But that would be unbelievably boring for you guys, so we're not going to do that. Okay, so tab transient, break right at the top of this region. And then here's why I like doing it this way. There is a function that will delete everything to the left of the cursor, like that. But to me, this just makes me feel more comfortable that I'm pretty sure I'm not losing anything. So we're going to go here to the next hit, which is right there with the snare hit. I'm going to go bink. And then that just gets rid of it right up to your next fill. And then your fade comes in. And then that way your tom's just isolated. It's ready to go. So you can kind of move a little bit quicker, knowing that that stuff is already kind of pretty much done. Break. Just kind of like that. And again, this is a low tom, so there's a ton of sustain on it. So maybe give it a little bit more, maybe not go right to the edge of where the next hit is, but get a little bit closer and do that. Cool. So yeah, that's, you can hear all the bleed that's still there just from the mics that the toms he's not even hitting. So, and it sounds pretty sterile, but if you opened up, say, the overheads, for example, you know, it'll come together just fine in the mix. That's all I'm worried about. So yeah, that's editing toms. You just kind of have to go through the whole song kind of bit by bit. Again, I'm not going to do that because you guys would probably never speak to me again. But yeah, so tab to transient, break at the top of the hit, fade out by the time the next hit comes in, most of the time. Again, none of this is like hard and fast or anything, but that should get you pretty far. Okay, so that's just kind of the place I start editing toms. You know, just to kind of get all the crud out of the track as much as we possibly can. Everybody's looking for clean punchy mixes, and a bunch of stuff out of phase never helps anything. So anyway, thanks for hanging out. Hope everybody's doing well and staying safe out there. This whole situation is super weird, but at least we can, you know, try to make some rock and roll in the meantime. Have a great day. Take care. I'm sure you'll be hearing from me soon. Thank you.